test problem. You know, it makes you do some reading, and it makes you figure out fractions and parts of money. So it's a good problem for you. So we're going to go through and do this one. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. At Louisville Middle School, the students are trying to raise money for the library. So when you read a problem and there's a diagram, make sure you look at the diagram every once in a while as you're reading so you know that the diagram makes sense. The goal is to collect $6,000. And so you see that goal right here. Goal's at the top. From fall to spring. Each month, the total amount collected will be shown on the thermometer pictured at the right. So far, from the beginning of the year to October, that shaded region is how much is representing what fraction of the goal they've reached and how much money. But you don't know the money yet or the fraction. That's what you have to figure out. Does that make sense? Okay. So use the thermometer to answer the following questions. So that means you should be drawing on the thermometer. Make sure to write your findings on the thermometer. So if you were taking a test, I would expect organized writing on the thermometer. Hannah, do you have a question? No? So this was one of those problems where we used patty paper or scrap paper to mark off even increments. So if we read the questions first, how much money was collected by the end of October? What fraction of the goal was reached by October? Those questions should be telling you to divide the thermometer up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my scrap paper, so to speak, which I'll zoom out here a little bit. We're going to take a piece of paper and just on scrap paper, mark off the amount, that little size, and then you take your scrap paper and you mark off even increments like I can with the smartboard. So I just mark off even increments. And it's really important to be neat here because your work here is the work for the whole problem. If you mess up your work here, all your answers are going to be wrong. So raise your hand if you have a question so far. Okay, so everybody's getting pretty good at that, it looks like. When I walk around the room, I see a lot of good work that way. My next step is then I'm going to count how many parts I have. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. So then I'm going to write in the fractions. So this would be 1/5 of the way to the goal. This is 2/5 of the thermometer, 3/5 of the thermometer, 4/5, and then the goal, which is 5/5, or the whole goal. When you're up to 1, that means you've got the whole goal. Okay? So Braden, on the first question, how do I figure out how much money was collected by the end of October if this is the goal and I've broken in my thermometer into 5 parts? What's the first step? How would I figure out this money for the top of that blue red?
That's what goes into 6,005 times.
Yeah, perfect. And Melena, when you do that, did you do that division already? 6,000 divided by 5?
Yeah.
What'd you get?
1,200.
1,200, right? Nicely done. So that means right here, we're at $1,200, which is the answer to 7 over here. So $1,200. Okay, Neve, what fraction of the goal? So one of the things is careful reading. This one was how much money, and this is what fraction. What'd you get, Neve?
I got 1/5.
What fraction of the goal was reached by October?
Yeah, 1/5.
1/5. I just didn't hear you. 1/5 of the goal. Okay, so Now, on part 9, it says by the end of December, the total amount collected is about 2,000. Fill in the bar below, so it's having you do a different thing with this bar here to show that 2,000 has been collected so far. So Hannah, how did you figure out where to put that 2,000 on this bar?
Well, that's 3,000 more and 800 more than that, so then we kind of just put 800 on.
Except for we're putting it on this bar, not that bar. So if this is 6,000, where would 2,000 go? About a third or exactly a third? How come exactly? Right. 6,000 divided by 2,000 is 3, or 2,000 times 3 is 6,000. So this is broken into thirds. And we would notice that money's on top of the bar, so you would put a $2,000 here. And shade here. And that's a third, like Hannah was saying. So in December, the fraction of the goal that the 2,000 represents is 1/3. So that's a little bit easier problem. Can you do a shading in of just a third? Any questions so far? How are we doing over here? Okay, what about middle table, girls? We good so far? This is where it got hard for everybody then. The next part. By April, now we're into April, the students collected $4,200. And in order to figure out where that is, what should I do, Grace?
Well, what I did was first I found out what 42 plus what equals 60.
Okay.
And that's 18.
So
plus 18 equals 60.
So she added up and found that 4,200 plus 1,800 makes 6,000. Or you could have said 6,000 take away 4,200, and you would have gotten 1,800. So you know there's 1,800 left. Okay, so that's good. To shade in the thermometer, to figure out the fraction that's raised, what you can then do is, you know that this is 1,200. So this right here would be 2,400 if you count by 12s, and we're going to try to figure out where the 4,200 goes next to get the fraction. So do you see how I got the 2,400? If I add another 12 to 24, what do we get? What do you get?
You get 36.
So this is 3,600, and then add another 12 and you get 4,800. And then if you add another 12, you get the 6,000. So you know that that 4,200 has to fit somewhere in here. Does that make sense? Because it's bigger than 3,600 and it's smaller than 4,800. How much smaller is it than 4,800? Need you know? It's 600 smaller, right? And this blue bar down here was 1,200, so it would be exactly half. So right in the middle, because this right here would be 600. Do you see that? So, do you guys see that? So you could take, I really want you to stop and think about that. Basically, you are going to have your bar now pull all the way up to there. And now we have new size divisions. We've got to divide again everything like that. So stop. Let's ask questions to that point. Elena.
I just have a question. How did you end up with, starting with 4,000? Yeah.
Because the problem said by April, the students collected 4,200. So let's bring a piece of paper in for scratch work. I took There's two ways. You could take your 6,000, and when you read that problem, it says they've already, in April, they're up to 4,200. And when you do this problem, you get that they have 1,800 left to reach the goal, which is what Grace said.
Yeah, but wouldn't you just use this bar as...
Okay, so that 4,200 on that bar, you have to figure out where it goes.
I still don't understand how you're getting the 4,200.
From the problem, the actual...
I understand that, but why are you using it in this? Because it just said what fraction of your goal is left. Wouldn't you just use this bar and your money of like 1,200?
So the problem is, to figure out what fraction of the goal is left, our bar was only divided into fifths, right? And 4,200 doesn't land on one of those numbers where the bar was divided into fifths. So we had to figure out how to divide the bar more. So 4,200, this part here, that bar, originally, if we go backtrack a little bit, what we knew was this was 1,200. If we counted by 1,200s, 12 plus 12 is 24, so then we get 2,400. Add another 1,200 and we get 3,600. That's here. Add another 1,200, we get 4,800. That's here. So 4,200 is going to be right here.
Yeah, but why are we using 4,200?
Because the problem is saying the students collected 4,200 by April, and they want to know at that point what fraction of the goal is left from the 4,200. So we have to get smaller fractions now because the 4,200 did not land on one of the fifths. Does that make sense? So I divided everything in half because it was $600 smaller than 4,800, which is half of the original blue bar. So now we're counting by tenths. So 1/10, 2/10, this is 3/10, 4/10, this is 5/10, 6/10, that's 7/10. So far, we are 7/10 of the way to our goal when it's 4,200. So we have 3/10 left to get. We need to fill in this, this, and this, so that's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and that's how you get this last number. Somebody had their hand up, I think, oh, Bailey.
Kind of what,
Helena.
But if they gave us 4,200, wouldn't it be, instead of 4,800, wouldn't it be?
Right, so now we're up to the yellow. They gave us 4,200. So you should be shading in your thermometer to see where that lands. And then you have to figure, it doesn't land on 4,800. So you have to figure out what fraction is left. So it lands exactly halfway between 3,600 and 4,800. So that means you have to cut your bars into half. And now you count the little white squares that are left. There's 3 of them out of 10. So there's 3/10 of the goal left to go. Hannah.
Is there a way to do it is take off the zeros instead of all zeros?
Counting by 12s. Did you hear what she says? You can just ignore the zeros and count by 12s, right? 6, 12. 12 plus 12 is 24. Plus 12 more is 36. So that's what I do too. Okay, I'm going to stop that one. We'll